it's the big bully hitting down on the little guy, right?
Hmm.
You know, you make boutique cigars, I make great cigars. Well, you know what? That might have been true at the beginning because there's this misconception that boutique cigars are made in 30 days and they're not fermented properly and it's just a quick turnaround to make money. Well, that's utter utter lie. I mean,
Hmm.
I have to make a better cigar than the legacy brands or just as good. So when a good cigar experienced cigar smoker lights that thing up, he's going to get a positive experience right away from the first puff.
Welcome to an all new Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reed, and today I'm here with Mario Caraballo. I hope I pronounced it correctly or got close to it. We were just talking just a few minutes ago and trying to get people's names correct this season. So, Mario, welcome to Deep Cuts Live.
Hey, brother, how are you? It's good to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Mario sent me messages on Instagram, and I get inundated like so many people with so many messages sometimes from people I can't tell if they're real or bots. I don't always respond to the messages. So it was nice to kind of meet you in person so now I can say, okay, yeah. And then I went back to the message and I'll say, okay, this is the real message. Because sometimes you get some really weird, at least I do on Instagram these days, bots, and they can be really sophisticated, like carry on like real conversations with you. And then you get to a point where you're like, you want me to do what? And then it's so I was happy that you approached me at the trade show a couple weeks ago and that we were able to kind of get you onto Deep Cut so that we could have a good conversation about you and your company and your experiences in the cigar industry.
It was a pleasure meeting you after almost 8 months of reaching out to you. And you know, I admire you as a human being. I admire your show. You have a great show. You put out some great content, some good information. You have a very smooth style, which is important to getting message across to the entire audience that you have out there. So I want to congratulate you on that, and I want
Thank
to upfront thank you once again for having me here to talk about Casa Caraballo cigars.
Yeah. Like I said, um, for those of you who are watching or listening, Mario was part of the Boutique Cigar Association's pavilion at the Premium Cigar Association PCA trade show. There's a lot of like acronyms in that, so
Yeah.
it's a tongue twister. But so you were part of the BCA pavilion this year, and I tell people who didn't go to the show or couldn't tell from all the videos that came out from me and other media outlets that this was the first time that the PCA has kind of teamed up with the BCA to do a pavilion, and it was a very nice area. I know it was towards the back, which was I think the only complaint, and maybe that there needed to be a bigger sign that says like right here, like this is where it's at. But I think you all came in with there being a lot of promotion and marketing where people at least knew to look for you all. So, um,
Yeah.
what was the show like for you as an exhibitor, like coming in with the BCA? Like what was your experience and what was your kind of final take on that whole experiment of this pavilion?
Well, you know, I've been to the show before as part of another team. Well, when I was distributed by Sutliff. So Sutliff usually has a small enclave with all their people there, and that was very positive back when I did it a couple times with them. Uh, however, the VCA we had a bigger focus in the entire uh, show because we wanted to not only uh, preview and show high quality premium cigars that are made by so-called boutique companies, you know, uh, and bring it to the PCA so retailers could have a one-stop shop for uh, the so-called boutique brands, right? And
Mhm.
I think we accomplished that in the sense that we were all centrally located. Uh, we didn't have a huge space in regards to individual spaces, but they were big enough where you showed your products and like you said, the only drawback at first was we were way out there in the back, and we didn't have one of those hanging signs from the ceiling, right? That, but you learn from your mistakes, and next time we'll have a big sign like that, so everybody could see it. But I think it was a positive experience in the sense that we all got together with the same goal and objective as a team, and we all knew going in that just because you go to the PCA doesn't mean you're going to sell cigars. The PCA is more about showing your brand, letting people know you're out there, and marketing your product. So from that perspective, it was a total win for everybody, in my opinion, and based on the responses and the conversations I had with my other colleagues. So that was very positive. From a personal perspective, I agree with that. I think it was a success in that aspect. First couple of days were numbing because normally you make sales the first couple of days. Yeah, but nobody did back there. Nobody. So we were like scratching our heads, going, "What did we do wrong?" Right? And you start talking after hours, and you go, "Hey, you got to be patient." Retailers are coming in; they got appointments, they got all kinds of prior scheduled meetings, and they're going to take care of that, and then eventually they'll make their way towards the rear, which they did. And my last day was my best day.
Wow.
I made a couple of sales that were good enough to cover, a lot of the expenses and a little more. So from that aspect, it was good. But more important, it was good for the PCA to bring in all these cigar brands that are out there that are just as good as the legacy brands, or better in some instances, that can bring a more diversity into the show, more choices for the retailers at great price points, right? So that's a win-win for everybody. That's a win-win for the PCA because you get more membership. It's a win for the BCA because we want everybody to know that we're not just a ragtag group of brand owners. We're actually professional. We have standards of conduct to be in the BCA. We have to meet certain criterias. We're selected. Just because you have the money doesn't mean you get in. You have to go through a questionnaire. You got to answer those questions. Make sure you meet the standard, right? And it's not an easy standard. So it's a win-win for everybody, and more important for not just the cigar industry, but for the retailers, right? Because retailers have a lot of decisions they have to make. They have an inventory. Some have a big shop, some have a small shop, and they all have their own stories and their own reasons why they will buy from you or not buy from you, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, it's up to you to sell your brand. And, like I tell everybody, hey, I make the best cigars, right? Everybody says that. Well, I make good cigars and I know they're great. So, because everybody tells me that I make great cigars. So until they say otherwise, I'm going to keep promoting that, right? And when a good retailer says, hey, I want to try your cigars, I'm going to say, yeah, here we go. Let's try them. Let's smoke them and let's criticize them and tell me what we can do better, right? Because there's always room for improvement in everything we do, So the PCA, I think, for everybody was a success.
Yeah, and full disclosure for those watching or listening. So just this year, I started actually working with the PCA. So I'm the content director. So for me, it was fun because this was the first show where I'm on like the other side, still doing media stuff, but on the other side of it. So I never want to assume, or you say, oh, like this is great. And that's not my type of style to spin it for people. So I thought it was great to have you kind of give your own personal take on how it was. Like I said, for me, I think what I heard and what I saw too is that, when you get on the show floor, it's so big that you're like, where is this person? Where's that person? So
Yeah.
you're seeing, so you're looking for signs, you're looking for some guidance. And so for me, that was like the biggest thing because I heard a lot of people are saying, oh, this BCA pavilion. And then when you get on the show floor, you're like, where is it? And then, it takes you a little while to get back there.
Yeah,
And there's so many retailers that have different strategies as they're going into the show. Like they have, like you said, a list of brands that they're definitely going to see. They're going to sit down. This is like their big buy-in for like the year. They have those meetings, and then they have like a little bit of time left over because some of them don't stay the whole 3 or 4 days. They stay like maybe 1 or 2 days, and then they, explore. And then they probably like found you all back there. It's like, oh yeah. So I would think, as you said, that there's a learning curve. I know I'll learn some stuff, like things to do differently next year as a media person with the PCA. And I think you all, like, maybe what will help too is setting up appointments so that people, will come out there for just to visit the whole pavilion and then take them around. Because that's what happened with me. Like once I got back there, I think it was either the second or the third day. Once I got back there, it was like I would go to one station back there and I'll talk to that company, that person, and then they were like, oh, now you should go over here. And they will actually walk me over to the next person. And then I would get there. Oh, now you should go over here. And then it was like nice to have that kind of, almost like back in elementary school, we have stations. Maybe they don't have stations anymore, but back in the 80s, at least we had stations. Yeah. And, it was nice because it was like, you kind of had, you spent a good 30 or 40 minutes back there, but you got to see all these different companies. And it was great stories. Everyone, because we just had Alan on from Family by Loyalty.
Great guy. Great cigars.
Yeah.
Great team,
Yeah, and we're saying like each booth, like yes, you all were in one big pavilion, but each one had its own unique story, own unique style, own approach to business. So
yeah, so we we strategized before we went out there. I mean, we planned this for almost 6-7 months. It wasn't like a 1, 2, 3 thing. It was carefully planned or articulate. We had meetings every week with all the companies that were going to participate. So this was a very thought out plan. And one of the things that we agreed upon was that, for example, when a retailer came to me and heard my story, and some of them lit up right there, because that's what I really like to do. I like to get the retailer to light up their cigars right there. That way, as they walk away, they're already saying this is a good cigar or not, right? If you give them the sticks and they walk away, then you have to work 10 times as hard. Because like this week, all I've been doing is following up and calling, all the guys that I was supposed to, follow up and see how they're doing, give them a week to just kind of settle down. And then the second week, call them up and say, hey, did you try the cigars? So, you're still interested. And that's how you work it. But we all agreed that once you were done with a retailer, then you said, let me take you and introduce you to XYZ brand, which is right next door, right? And then you did that introduction, and then they took the same approach afterwards. And some retailers got to see 5 or 6 brands there, right? Some, because of their time, only you got to see 2. But at least we all did that to help each other out, right? In the sense that, hey, you may not buy my brand, and that's okay, but you may like Alan's brand because it's nice and cute and good cigars, and so let's go over there and talk to Alan, and let me introduce you to him. And I think it worked out pretty well. I think some of us did that more than others, but that's expected because once you're in the grind, you're focused on whatever it is you're doing, and not on what's going on around you. So yeah, we did do that, and I think it benefited everybody in the sense that some people got exposed to other retailers, and I had a retailer from Alaska, and he loved my price point. He goes, man, your price points are great, and I go, is the shipping going to kill you? Because you're in Alaska, you know what I mean? So how can I make it cheaper for him where he could still buy my cigars and not have to pay so much, right?
Mhm.
and there's a way around it. Instead of shipping from the States, I ship directly from Nicaragua. You know what I mean? And it saves him a whole ton of money. Uh, so from that perspective, I think it was very positive. Very positive for everybody. And we were lucky. We had you out there. We had Spanish media out there covering Mexico and like 16 other countries. I think it was Humo Latino, the magazine. They were out there. They did an interview in every little uh, kiosk that was out there belonging to each individual brand. You know what I mean? That's special
Mhm.
attention. You know what I mean? And we were grateful for that because, they took the time. I mean, they gave me like 10 minutes to talk about the brand, and they questioned me, and it was a great interview because you got to tell your story to a whole new audience that's overseas, right? And some good things have come out of that for me. I got a call from Panama. I got a call from Colombia. I have people that are interested in bringing the cigars to Panama and Colombia. They want to do other things that are more in the high class side of the
Mhm.
house, which like nice dinners with cutting lights and stuff like that, which is to me is interesting. Uh, Now, how do we make that work where nobody loses money and everybody wins? Right, that's the hard thing to do.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was talking about AI, of course, because that's like the big topic in tech these days in media. But how there's AI out there now that will dub or like redub your videos into another language.
Right.
So
Yeah.
opens it up to another. And so as much as we talk about how the U.S. is such an important market, as you said, there are other markets out there. So
Yeah.
imagine if you could take like the U.S. media, because there's a lot of great media personalities and platforms in the cigar industry that are based here in the U.S. But if you could take that content and somehow redub it or transcribe it into another language, you know, I
Yeah.
just think it opens up new doors.
Yeah, I had a gentleman from Lebanon. Lebanon consumes more tobacco per capita than the United States. That's statistically been proven. And you think Lebanon, you know,
Hmm.
well, there's a lot of money in Lebanon. If you've ever been to Lebanon, and even with its current crisis, it's still a very productive country. So he was interested in the cigars, and he tried them in Nicaragua, and he couldn't make it to the show. You know, so I speak a little Arabic, not a lot. So I use my AI tool to make sure that I got the message across to him.
Hmm.
In Arabic, right? And he wrote back in English. And I'm going, you didn't tell me you spoke good English. I thought you only spoke Spanish. He goes, no, I speak Arabic, French, and Spanish. And English. So yeah, AI is a big tool out there now. Some companies are using it for commercials. Marketing. They use the nice face. It's kind of like a caricature, but it gets a message across.
Well, it's funny because I was taking one of my, since I work from home, I don't take a one big lunch break, but like chop it up during the day. And I was watching this video where they were showing us how advanced AI is getting. And someone took Cher, the singer Cher, and Madonna's song La Isla Bonita, and they had Cher singing it and like acting in the video as if she was like actually did this stuff, and you could not tell. I mean, if nobody had told you, you would just think like, wow, like she actually. It looked almost like flawless, and
Yeah.
so that's where AI is going, where you can make, like you said, commercials and promote. So just imagine the cigar industry, like someone like you is like busy and you're like, oh, I can't be over here and do this to do that. And you just like somehow set up an AI to say, make me an Instagram, reel that's going to be 30 seconds of me describing this cigar or
Yeah.
whatever. and you
Yeah,
do it. You could
yeah,
probably do a decent, and you tell it. Of course, you probably have to feed it the information of what to say, but it could take your voice. There's stuff that can already dub people's voices, and it's just amazing.
yeah.
Like that's all
There's a couple of apps out there that they'll take a reel and then you put your content in there, automatically program it for you.
hmm
And then there's another. There's like 3 or 4 apps that work together that do what one should be doing, but it's kind of difficult because you have different developers. But there's an app that will take you ask it to write a narrative on cigars using this name, and it'll write you a narrative, and then you take that and you load that into an AI meme who's speaking, who looks like a real person.
hmm
You pick the language, they translate it, then you make a video of it, right? And you add more content. The key is learning how to layer all those different apps together. Once you master that, I mean, you got a pretty good tool to do all kinds of nice, neat things in the cigar world, right? You know, besides pictures and magazines and all the other stuff that's already out there. Yeah. So
Exactly.
for you content guys, you know, that's heaven. That's heaven
hmm
because it saves you a lot of time and it helps you accomplish your daily task or projects that you have scheduled. So that's technology is amazing.
I know. I feel like we've done like a little technology podcast here, so I
No,
want to
it's
like
okay. That's not bad.
I want to switch gears a little bit. So, how did you get into the cigar industry?
So you know, going back 3 generations, my father and my grandfather, uh, they did cigars in Cuba. Uh, my father and my grandfather made cigars on the streets of Havana, Little Havana, and Old Havana, and sold them to a lot of tourists. And that was like an extra gig. It was like the gig economy of Cuba back in the '60s. You know what I mean?
hmm
And my grandfather made some great cigars, and so I was always around cigars as a young child. You know, and then I immigrated to the United States in the '60s, and of course, you're a new immigrant, you're poor, you're in a new country. Your focus is education and climbing up that ladder. So there was a lot of hard work, uh, and so at 17, let me backtrack here. So living in Miami, I walk Little Havana every day on my way to school. I walk by the Camacho factory, like the Tan de Bronce. I need all those little mom and pop shops on Southwest 8th Street on 22nd Avenue. And it always fascinated me, to one day I'm going to have something like that. Well, I didn't realize it was going to take me 40 years, right? Because of economic conditions. So at age
hmm
17, I joined the Army. And the Army ended up being a career for 22 years. So joined the Army and went into I was a paratrooper for 20 some years. Worked in special forces, did all kinds of crazy stuff around the world. I've been to every little conflict we've had in the last 40 years, to include the last 2 that we were involved in. And then I left the military. I went into another career field doing special agent type work around the world. And then I retired. And I get a phone call on a Friday afternoon by one of my old commanders. He goes, "Hey, I need you in Nicaragua tomorrow. There's riots going on, and we need to get some expats out for this company that's requesting assistance." And I said, "Okay, send me a plane ticket, and I'll be in Houston in about 5 hours, and then we'll meet there, and then get down to Managua." So we did, and while we're in flight, we're talking to the company that's hired us as consultants, and we're negotiating salaries. You know, so my bottom line was, you got to give me $828 a day, period. And it stuck. And then we were supposed to go into Nicaragua for 2 weeks. We ended up staying there 3 years.
Wow.
So about 8 months into the operation, I said, "Okay, it's my time to make my cigars." So I took a day off, went up to Esteli, knocked on a lot of doors. A lot of doors were shut, uh, or a lot of the offers they were making was just total bullshit. You know, they would focus on ripping me off instead of helping me get a brand out, right? And then I ran into an old friend uh, who had worked with Robina in Cuba for 20 some years. And I said, "Hey, man, I didn't know you had a shop. I thought you were in Ecuador. And you're here." He goes, "What do you need?" I said, "Well, I want to develop some blends." And so we started to work on that. That took about 12 months to accomplish it. And that's where the 828 line came about. $828 a day, you know. And if you look at the band, it's got the 828 in it, and then it's got cross arrows in the back. That's a little bit of my army background. It's got the Cuban bird, national bird, because that's where I was born, you know. Then on the other side, it's got the tobacco leaves, and the 828 line came about, you know. So I got into cigars late in the game, but it was due to economic conditions that were I had the opportunity to actually get in the game, and I took that line to the PCA in 2019, and it was a hit. I mean, everybody liked it. Atlanta was hot for it, especially my silverback torpedo San Andres wrapper. Boys love that stick. So it was good. It was good for 2 or 3 years, and then I had some difficult time. I ended up with cancer. I wasn't able to manage the company the way I wanted. The person who was running it uh, was not competent enough, in my opinion, and did some stupid things. So I had to shut him off, shut him down, uh, and then restart it with my name. And you know, I figured give it my own name, Casa Caraballo. And then this last 2 years, we've been collaborating with the factory where I make my cigars. They make cigars for the legacy brands, uh, and they wanted to get one of their cigars out to the U.S. market. So I said, well, let's start blending and let's start coming up with a great cigar, and then I'll introduce it at the PCA. You know, which we did was the Apache and the Donello. You know, and then I worked on the La Tampeña, which is in honor of all the women who've worked the tobacco industry since the 1800s. And that turned out to be also an excellent cigar. So here we are. Here we are.
You talked about, I spent part of today kind of listening to some other interviews that you've done, and you're very candid about basically the boutique experience, and how it differs from being, obviously, I don't even like the word boutique because
I hate it.
sometimes
I hate
I,
it.
I feel like first of all, it's hard to define. It's hard to define boutique. Second of all, like when I first got into the industry back in 2010, which just feels like eons ago now, it was used as a bad word.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
was used by larger companies to kind of say, our cigars are better. Like those cigars over there are okay, but they're boutique. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So it was like this horrid thing. And I think that's kind of changed. The perception has changed a bit, I think now, because I see more companies, even larger companies, trying to tap into now the boutique lifestyle and the boutique vibe, which is kind of like, personality driven. It's more, family, homey feeling and stuff like that. But it's still a struggle, I think, just from speaking to people, and you can tell me if this is true or not, to kind of be in this boutique category.
Yeah.
Like it's not the same as being like you're in the premium cigar world, which is already a very niche product, and now you're in. Not only are you having to deal with being that niche product, but then in an even smaller category, you're told you're boutique. So
Yeah. I mean, it's the big bully hitting down on the little guy, right?
mhm.
You know, you make boutique cigars. I make great cigars. Well, you know what? That might have been true at the beginning because there's this misconception that boutique cigars are made in 30 days and they're not fermented properly and it's just a quick turnaround to make money. Well, that's utter lie. I mean,
Mhm.
I have to make a better cigar than the legacy brands or just as good. So when a good cigar experienced cigar smoker lights that thing up, he's going to get a positive experience right away from the first puff. From the first draw, it's got to be a positive experience. So my cigars are just as good as any other cigar out there, or better in some cases. You know, the issue is how society and the industry, the folks who are around the industry, are programmed, right? Social media has a lot to do that. Ignorance has a lot to do that. If you don't read about a cigar, if you don't learn how that cigar was actually handled from the minute it was seeded to the minute it was fermented and it was cured and then it was put into a nice rolled cigar, then you really don't know much about that cigar. You're just smoking tobacco, right? And a lot of people, unfortunately, fall in that category. And you know, it's not it's not that we're competing with the legacy brands because we can't compete with them. I mean, these legacy brands, they make so many cigars a year and they stop. Some of them can't even open new accounts because they don't have enough tobacco to grow, right?
Mm.
And we all know who they are. I mean, it's an open market. And then you have the smaller companies inside Nicaragua that are helping these legacy brands meet their numbers because there is a shortage worker in Nicaragua for rollers and experienced rollers at that, right? Because if I offer you 25 cents more, you're going to jump ship and go to my factory. Well, that destroys your whole operation. You have to go find some new people. There was an exodus from Nicaragua during the immigration crisis that a lot of people left. That hurt the industry, you know. So all those factors, equate to people saying, "Oh, it's a boutique cigar. They're not that good." Well, I dispute that, and I dispute that because everybody that smoked my cigars, and I've had some dedicated legacy brand smokers who smoke Davidoff, who smoke Plasencia, Perdomo, and they come back and they say, "Whoa, bro, this is hitting it nice and hard here. How come you're not making more money?" Because it's always about the money, right? I
But
said,
yeah,
yeah, well, I don't got $25,000 to get on a spread in a magazine, so I could look cool with my cigar in my hand, you know, and then let the world know that that I have this brand and everybody read it. It takes time to get there because
yeah.
there are other
I guess,
priorities.
not to interrupt you, but to think about that, maybe in the 90s during the cigar boom, you could buy good publicity and you could buy market share. I don't know if it's that easy today because I know I'm thinking of certain brands out there that have lots of money and they're putting lots of money into the marketing and to try to come up with like a image, of this is who we are or whatever. But they haven't been in the industry as long as you. They haven't been in the industry as long as some of the other boutique brands, and yet they're trying to use the influence of money to basically buy that market share as if this is 1994, and it's not. And I just don't know if people. I think today's consumers are a little bit more savvy, and today's consumers get bombarded with so many different messages that it takes a lot more than an image, like I said, like or a magazine ad or whatever, to convince them that oh, you have money to run an ad in this magazine. You must be good compared to somebody who doesn't. I just think it comes down to like notoriety, like um, being able to get have people to see more of what you have to offer, something like that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's about getting your name out there and having people smoke your cigars and then having them tell your story, right? And,
Hmm.
and that and that's what I tell everybody that smokes my cigars, right? I said, "Hey, man, if you like my cigar, don't tell me, tell the world, right? Put it up on Instagram, put it up on Twitter, or on Facebook, whatever it is you're doing, tell the world that you smoked this cigar and it was a good cigar, and it was a good price, and that you recommend that they try it. So I tell that to everybody that tries my cigars, uh, because that's the only way to kind of grow organically. It's a step by step process. Now I could, if I had a budget for marketing, then that would be different. I think I would be doing a little better, but that takes time also. And marketing alone doesn't not give you success. You have to have a good strategy. With good contingency plans uh, to make sure that you're staying on point and on message, right? And I think as long as you do that and you respect others, right? Respect is an important thing that I think we sometimes miss in the industry, uh, because let me tell you, man, it's hard work.
Hmm.
It's not easy. You know, uh, there's guys who have small companies who, are struggling to keep that brand going because that's their passion and that's their life. And there's a lot of hard work, and I respect that. I respect that because it's easy to say, okay, I did it. It didn't work out. I quit. Well, if you quit, then you should have never started in the first place. You know what I mean? Uh, so yeah, there's there's uh, there's that perception out there, but I think it's changing. I think even the retailers are realizing that they need to start bringing something new because generationally we're changing. Uh, my sons don't smoke the legacy brands. They smoke all kinds of different boutique, what we call boutique brands, stuff that comes out new that they find interesting and entertaining, right? And
Yeah, and I think there's lots of consumers like that today, which benefits the boutique category in general. In that, like you said, the younger cigar smoker, as we've come to know them over the younger adult, we should say, over the last couple of years, they're not brand loyal, and that might not be good news
exactly,
for like the bigger brands, but for boutique,
yeah,
that's your opportunity, and that's a great thing that they're willing to try. Like you said, if it has a good story behind it, they're willing to try it. Or even if they just think it visually looks
yeah,
interesting, they're willing to try it. And I think that confuses a lot of established brands that are just think that they can sometimes, like the name alone kind of sells the product, that they don't have that brand loyal consumer anymore. Like the consumer is like you said, they just want to try good cigars, and they're willing to
well,
try it. But I think it comes down to though the retailer, if they're willing to give you all the shelf space and the opportunity to compete, and then are they willing to, when they're guiding their customer through the store, are they willing to introduce that brand, give a little bit of a push or whatever. A lot of times I found like the retailers don't know the full story. So it's hard for
they do.
them. So they're going to go with whatever they know what is going to be an easy sell. They're going to say, go over here. And they always say, I don't have the time to build a brand or push a brand. And there are even some distributors and wholesalers that I've dealt with over the years that are the same way. It's like they won't bring in a boutique brand to sell to retailers because they say, "Oh, we're not brand builders. We don't have time to tell the story." But I think you have to make the time. Like I think the stories are what sells any product.
Exactly, and sadly, I've been to retailers, and normally when I go into a retail shop, I spend a couple of hours there, and then if it's a new retailer, I come back and kind of educate them, help them, right? Uh, you know, if you hire somebody to be behind the counter and they don't know anything about cigars, you're failing. You're failing yourself because when somebody walks in that humidor, that person needs to be right there with them, saying, "How are you? What are you looking for? What do you normally smoke?" Right? And say, "We have that." And then, "Oh, by the way, have you tried something new in the past?" So here's our entire selection of new stuff. You don't have to pinpoint one brand. You can say, "Here are options for you that you have." And then if they ask a direct question, you'd say, well, based on that question, I would smoke this cigar, right?
Mhm.
And now you sold two cigars instead of one, right? And that guy's going to come back again and buy two more cigars. So the retailers sometimes do that. They fail at that. A lot of them tell me, yeah, I don't have any shelf space, and I go, I'm looking at your shelf, it's half empty because you don't have the accounts that you're supposed to have because they're
Mhm.
hard to get. So you're buying your legacy stuff from somebody and you're making a penny on it when you could be selling something that's just as good, making more profit on it, right? So I tell them, put my stuff on the floor, man. I don't care. Put it on the floor. And one of them laughed at me and they said, really? I said, yeah, put it on the floor. When people walk, they look at the floor,
Mhm.
And if you go to some big stores, you'll see stuff stacked on the floor, because they have so much and they put it out there and it sells.
And
So
there's different ways of that retailers can bring in a product without giving a shelf space. Like I'm
yeah,
thinking of, I've
exactly.
seen some retailers, they have something as simple as a nice table that they'll put either inside the humidor or outside the humidor, and it's like new stuff, and they'll see how well it moves. And if it moves really well, then that gives them an idea, like, okay, let me go back and reorder. Maybe this will be a regular thing, or we'll at least bring this in more.
Yeah.
Um, so I
And
think
there's so
there's
many
different ways
strategies.
of doing it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's so many strategies you could use when you're selling, right? You know, uh, you know, every week you have a special,
Mhm.
and that special is one of these off brands like mine, right? Hey, this is a great cigar, guys. It's the cigar of the week. You know, you buy two, you get one free, or whatever. There's all kinds of strategies out there for them to generate money. But retailers, you have retailers that just sell cigars, and you have these lounges, and uh, they all make their money a different way. Some lounges make their money on events, right? And they have events every week, and you buy two cigars, you get one free to get in. And then you got lounges that are franchises. That's how they make their money. And then you
Mhm.
got the guy who's grinding there, who's trying to sell good cigars, and has good people behind the counter that are knowledgeable and can give the client, you know, a history lesson on whatever they want, right? So all those come to play in the big scheme of things, and you know, each of them has its own merits, right? And it is what it is. But yeah, unfortunately, the industry is, it's a tough industry, uh, and the big brands have realized that they missed a great opportunity. But when they blinked, it was already too late. You know what I mean? Because there's some smaller companies out there that are doing good. You know, uh, and the reason they're doing good is because they had a lot of industry connections. They
Mhm.
worked in the industry for 10, 15 years. So they come up with one good cigar and they launch another two cigars, but their focus is to get that good cigar out there, get their name out there, market that stick, and then grow from there, right? So there's a lot of that out there, and good for them. They're doing a great job. And anytime you bring something new to the to the to the field, I think it's a positive for everybody, uh, for the industry, and more important for the consumer. They have so many choices. Which is good to have choices to say, okay. I mean, it's important to have choices, and uh, I was blessed when I had a Davidoff guy who only smokes Davidoff. This guy is very wealthy. He's got a boat in Annapolis, and I happened to be in a store in Maryland, and he's a little cocky guy, and he goes, "What do you got there?" And I go, "Well, these are my brands, blah blah blah." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So I gave him an Apache, and I gave him a Silverback, and I said, "Here's my card, man. Tell me how bad that is when you have time." Of course, I didn't think he would get back to me. I think he just smoked them, and 2 weeks later, I get a text message. You know, hey Mario, you know, this cigar is just as good as any Davidoff Churchill I've ever smoked. I go,
You know
thank you.
what? I was gonna say maybe that would be a great marketing thing to address kind of that argument that people are going to give you, like, oh, like I don't know, to have like a sheet that says if you like this brand, and it'll be like some, like you said, the legacy brands that people are familiar with. You should try this brand in my portfolio, because then it kind of
Yeah,
shows them like a more affordable, and
yeah,
then like this is the price point that my cigar is. You don't have to put the other person's MSRP there,
yeah.
but if you can show
But
them that progression, I
yeah,
think that will make a lot of retailers, because retailers are just so. I'm reading this book about communication, and it says that anytime you have to make someone think, it burns calories,
well,
and,
it
and
frustrates them. It
yeah,
frustrates them.
and so
You said something critical there. You know, when they have to put on their critical thinking hat,
yes,
they get mad at you.
they
You know,
do.
because they feel that you're questioning them instead of trying to help them. You know, hey, I want retailers to make a lot of money. I want them to be successful. That's why I make good cigars, because they can make a good return of investment on my cigars, right? Getting
Yes,
that
I think
message across to them is difficult. It's
yeah.
difficult, you know,
So
and
yeah, so you can
and
easily, I think, position your brand to say, hey, if you like this namesake brand or whatever, you would love this in my portfolio. It's very similar, and I think
yeah,
I've seen even some of the big companies do that with products within their portfolio, like when they're getting ready to like phase out maybe a certain cigar line that's not going to be available anymore.
yeah,
They will do that with their own product. They say, if you like this product, then you will love this other product. And it will sometimes be like the lesser, like a lower tier product, not quality wise, but just
right,
price
right,
point wise that people don't think about. And they're like, what?
yeah,
But
yeah,
it works for them. So I'm sure that you could adapt that to your own strategy too.
yeah. You have to be careful because there's some the legacy brands that are very jealous and they'll throw money at you and sue you, right? Just to
Right.
bog you down, bog you down in court.
Hmm.
Alan can tell you, you know, he had to change his whole branding because some legacy brand says, "Oh, you're infringing on my invention." Well, it, legally they were not, but
Right.
I told him I said, "Don't waste your money on a lawyer. He'll drag this thing out, and you lose all your money. You know, you'll win, but you lose your money. So don't do it.
Hmm.
Just rebrand it, right? Do something different." And God and behold, his new logo is even better than the last one. You know what I
I
mean?
know. Like, that's what
I
we
know.
talked about in his show, like how the challenge or the something that you think is going to be bad ends up being turning out to be the best thing that could
Perfect.
happen. Like
It's
you,
beautiful.
I'm sure
It's
you've
beautiful.
experienced the same thing in your business. Like
Yeah.
something that was bad,
Yeah.
now you might look back at it and say it's kind of good that that happened, because I would never
Yeah.
have been pushed or forced to rethink this and reapproach it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Now,
I told him write them a letter and thank them for being so persistent, right? And it's also pretty damn petty, right? When a big multinational, because they have the money, does something petty like that, right? Uh, to me, that's not an honorable thing to do, uh, even
I
if
think
it's business, you know.
yeah, I was about to say I think it's just a corporate kind of business approach now.
Oh
What
yeah, yeah.
it's
I
like,
mean,
you get
it's
right on on the front of IP,
yeah,
and like you're protecting your IP,
yeah,
and therefore you need to defend it, and that's
yeah.
it's
Well,
just
yeah. That what I tell everybody is it's kind of hard to compete with those folks because they have something special. They have something unique, right? That nobody else has. So, I mean, you're not competing with them. Those guys have their own customers that are very uppity up because you're spending 500, 600, up to thousands of dollars for a box of cigars. You know what I mean? So
mhm.
that's a whole different level, you know, of gamemanship. So, but you know what? Uh, each one of us has our own ethics, our own moral compass that we live by, and as long as you stick to that and you respect people and you're good to people, things work out. You know, things work out. You know? So it's one of those things you take with a grain of salt and you move on.
So where do you want your brand and your company to go from here?
Well,
Like, and
yeah,
I ask that because I know most people want their company to grow, but I've known people who start companies simply for the fact that they want to sell it at some point. I know people
yeah,
who are the complete opposite. They have no intention of ever selling it, but they want to reach a personal goal. Like they have something that they want to achieve, and they hope that they can, like, the company will help them reach that goal. So, what's your goal?
yeah. So I already reached my main goal, which was, you know, create my blends and put them out on the street and put out an excellent product with good reviews. I've done that, So from that perspective, I checked that lock up. Uh, of course, I want to grow, right? I want to grow, but I want to grow slowly. I don't want to grow too fast, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I want to grow where I can manage things and uh, not lower my quality, keep that quality at a high point, and continue to provide high quality products at a slow to moderate pace. You know, and I don't want to sell unless it's just something you can't refuse, right? The selling is not in my radar right now. What's in my radar is to, you know, continue to grow. Uh, you know, get 100 stores, 200 stores, and be able to sustain them with good quality cigars. You know, uh, help other people that need help in the industry uh, with either advice or collaborating with them. I believe that's important. I don't think there's enough of that in the
Hmm.
industry. I think there's a lot of hey, forget about them. They don't count. So that's my approach. If somebody ever came and said we want to buy your blends, and we went, we could sit down and talk because that's business, right? But that's not on my radar right now. My radar, I like to own. I like to own a retail shop also. That's part of my business plan. You know, so it's not just making the cigars and selling them wholesale. In my business plan, I have uh, I have a phase where I purchase a retail shop, and that retail shop will have a wall that will be nothing but you know uh, new legacy cigars, right? Us, not just the old guys, right? Uh, and then promote them because I'm going to have somebody on that store that's going to be their job because we're going to sell more of those cigars than we will the onesies and twosies, right? You got to buy seven. You got to buy the entire line, and only 2 boxes sell, and you can't get enough of them. You know,
Yeah, and I think to sound like an old 1980s cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon at the end, the change begins with you.
it does.
So,
You know,
you
I,
know,
I've
you
always
have
been a
to you have
yeah,
to start the change yourself. So like if you enter the retail world and you start doing that, then that becomes, you expand your circle of influence to consumers. You're changing their view of those cigars. And like I said, and then you're starting to kind of just affect the whole industry in a different way. So I
yeah,
think that's a great goal to have. And I haven't heard that goal yet,
yeah,
with a lot of people because a lot of people are just like, oh, I don't want to really get into retail. But I think, I think it makes sense
yeah,
because obviously you have your own brand.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
kind of gives you a whole different stage to kind of play on.
I mean, right? The first retail shop may not be Casa Caraballo. I'll probably keep the name that it has because you don't want to change that overnight and then
Hmm.
uh, kind of disappoint the loyal customers that you have, right? So that's your starting point. But then you could open up a second one with your name, like Casa Montecristo, right? You know,
Hmm.
do that, you know, and you could even franchise it if you want to, you know, uh, because it's a turnkey operation, So, and there's all kinds of ways to do that. So yeah, I agree with you, and I think if everything works out, that will be uh, that will happen. And if it does happen, I'll make sure I let you know, and you will come down to that lounge and smoke a cigar and enjoy, you know, uh, and be part of that family, wherever it may be. Right now, I'm looking at a couple of places in Florida. Uh, so hopefully that'll work out, and then we'll see what happens. But no, I don't want to sell right now, or I also want to expand into Latin America, uh,
Mhm.
Colombia, Panama, uh, Venezuela. Venezuela, I can't right now because of all the embargo and all kinds of political BS, But I have a lot of people from Venezuela saying, "Hey, man, I went to Miami and I tried your cigars. Can we get some?" Right? And I said, "Bro, I can't send you that to Venezuela. I get in trouble, and I'm not going to risk it, right? If you're ever in the States, call me, and I'll give you some." And and I do. I mean, I you know, I'm never hesitant to give a cigar away to somebody. The one thing I don't do is, I told you earlier on, I'm not a marketing company. I don't hand out hats and T-shirts and
Right.
a lot of cutters and stuff because I don't have the budget for that. I'm in the business of selling cigars, and that's where my money goes, to making good cigars so you can enjoy them. Now, every once in a while, I buy a little, couple hats and stuff, and I'll share them with you and way. But the focus is making good cigars. You know.
At this point in the show, I like to kind of close out this part of the interview with two questions. The first of those questions is, do you have a philosophy that you live by?
Yes, I do. I have a so I have a because of my upbringing and my background in the army. No is not in my vocabulary, right? When you get dropped behind enemy lines and you got to go hit a target, and you may not come back, no is not an option. It's yes, we're going to go in, we're going to accomplish the mission, we're coming home, and everybody that goes in with you comes home with you. So I have that ingrained in my blood, in my philosophy, where I lead by example. And we could talk a whole segment about leadership and all these bullshit little clips you see on Instagram that I did this and that, and if it wasn't for this, you're not going to be a millionaire. That's all hyperbole. You know, uh, when you're on the ground and you got to make tough decisions because people's lives depend on it, your whole mindset changes. And if you have a negative mindset, you die. You die. So I have a very positive mindset. When I was told I was going to die because I had bone cancer and prostate cancer, uh, you know, I was scared. First time in my life, I've really been scared, right? Because it's something I can't cure, I can't control. You know, so I took a step back and I got my family together and I said, I don't want to hear any negative stuff here. All right, I don't want you guys crying. I don't want you guys playing around. Don't pity me. I want you guys to focus on your daily lives, you know, and be happy. And I'm gonna worry about the winning strategy, right? And my winning strategy was I locked my surgeon in a room and I debriefed that guy like if he was a prisoner of war. I wanted to know every little detail of how he was gonna treat me and how that targeted treatment was gonna affect every part of my body. So there was things that I didn't agree with, and I told him, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do this. And God and behold, he was a great surgeon. When we went into the surgery for the prostate, I said I had stage 4 prostate cancer. It had already gone into my bones. And I said, take it out, but I don't want you to cut it. I want you to slice. I had done a lot of research for prostate surgeries around the world and what was successful and not as far as recovery. And I've always been a healthy guy. Uh, Fitness was always part of my regime in the army, after the army. So health wise, I knew I was in good shape. But before the surgery, I lost 40 pounds just to be even better, to
Mhm.
recover faster, right? And I spent 6 hours on the operating table
Wow.
and he sliced it Fast forward 2 years, because that's how long it takes for you to fully recover. Everything they told me, the nightmare that they told me I was going to live with a bag, I was going to probably die from the bone cancer, blah, blah, blah. All those things never happened. I'm fully functional. I don't have any of those symptoms that I was supposed to be with the rest of my life. Part of that was my mindset. The other part was science. Thank God for good science, So having a positive mindset helps you when you're struggling, And then I had the bone issue where they had to do targeted radiation on my pelvis for 7 weeks. So I went surgery, 4 weeks, chemo, took a break, and then boom, 6 or 7 weeks of radiation. And there were days that I wanted to die. I was feeling so bad. Every ounce of strength that I had, I lost. And it's taken me 2 or 3 years to get back to where I feel good. Like now, I feel good. I feel alive. I feel energized.
Mhm.
But a lot of that has to be right here, man. And I'm a very positive type mindset. And while being positive, I always like to help others out. It satisfies me if you call me in the middle of the night and you say, "I got this problem. I need you to listen to me." And I'll sit there and listen because I want you to be successful. I don't want you to do stupid things. I want, so we need a little humanity in everything we do in this world. So that's my philosophy, man.
And thank you for sharing all that, because that was definitely some personal stuff. So I think someone who listens to that will definitely benefit from that story that you and the experiences that you went through. I want you to finish this sentence. Mario Caraballo is
a great guy. I'm a great guy, man. I give my shirt off my back to everybody because I live by that. And I think that growing up with a lot of hardship shaped that, and I'm glad I'm able to do that. So yeah, I'm a good guy, and I make great cigars.
Well, that kind of leads into the next question, which is before we close out this part of the interview, could you tell people what website, what social media they need to follow in order to keep up with you and your brand?
Yeah, Mario Caraballo, Casa Caraballo Cigars at casacaraballo.com, and on Instagram at Casa Caraballo, on Twitter at Casa Caraballo. The same thing for Facebook. You will be able to enjoy the 828 lineup, which includes a San Andres Torpedo limited edition. Great cigar, rated 95 by Stogie Press. You'll be able to enjoy the 828 Oscuro, which got a Sumatra wrapper in it. And this cigar was number 2 cigar for 2021 by Ash Quarterly, rated 9.6. And now we have La Campeña, which is a great cigar in honor of the women. The Apache and the Donello, that's already gotten good reviews by some of the people out there who give reviews to cigars. They're all up in the 90s, so great cigars. And ask your tobacconist to bring them into your stores.
Awesome. I want to thank Mario for coming on to Deep Cuts and spending an hour and 3 minutes with us. And he's going to stay tight for a few minutes because we're going to be filming a couple other things that you can will be able to see on YouTube and also Instagram. But if you missed any of this interview or you want to see any of the others, the best place to go is actually YouTube. So you can go to youtube.com/deepcutslive. And you can also go to deepcutslive.com and see all the past 130 some episodes that we've done, other interviews. And you can see this one also in its entirety. But thank you all for watching and listening. And until next